Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. This essay is about how the forced mass migration of black and brown peasants, how they're being assimilated and integrated into Western society, or indeed are they being assimilated or integrated, and what may be some of the obstacles to that, and what are some of the differences in behaviour that these people have when they come from these third world basket case countries. As Western globalist controlled governments are forcing and continuing to force mass black-brown migration to the West, are they putting any effort into ensuring or even minimally facilitating or assisting social integration and assimilation for all these peasant migrants arriving en masse? In fact, third world multiculturalism is being forced onto the Western white citizenry as well as the migration, that is. No effort at assimilation is being made by Western governments, and one could easily make the argument that globalist-controlled Western governments are deliberately fostering racial differences and promoting divisive tribalism. Western citizens in alleged democracies are, of course, getting no say and no choice in the matter. In the suburb of Sydney, Australia, a dog is volubly howling in piteous agony as a recent rural peasant migrant dismembers the live animal limb by limb. The migrant stops for a break mid-dismemberment as the still conscious animal continues to howl in obvious excruciating pain. The peasant migrant, who speaks barely one word of English, seems oblivious. The pain they are inflicting on another creature fails to move them or concern them at all. This is, of course, illegal in Australia and most of the West, and dogs are routinely kidnapped from backyards for selected migrant consumption. But when this matter is reported to the relevant authorities, they backpedal immediately, claiming it would be racist to take up the matter, and even to report such astonishing cruelty to animals by a non-white migrant is in itself racist. However, report the much lesser cruelty of a white person leaving a dog in a backyard without food or water for a day, and the authorities run the doorstep in lightning speed. Certain brown-black migrants organise illegal trapping of Australian marsupials and Australian native wildlife, all of which are protected species under Australian law. And then they place these marsupials in cages with pet South Asian constrictor snakes, or raptor birds they've also captured, or especially starved cats. And then they take bets on how long the terrified marsupial will survive in the cage before being ripped to pieces, all for the entertainment of the exclusively third world migrant spectators. I mean, really, how could anyone watch the head being torn off of a terrified and screaming baby koala or baby kangaroo as it frantically tries to escape the cage? The authorities, however, could not be less interested, absurdly insisting that the highest bar of evidence must be met before they could act. They would only investigate the case if video was provided, which is difficult given these things happen at night, and if all the law-breaking participants magically decided to sign confessions. What a joke. Walking through a large park in Australia, a well-dressed, middle-aged white man walking with two medium-sized and very well-trained dogs. In a children's play area at the edge of the park, about 250 metres away, a large group of brown peasant migrant grandparents, none of whom speak English, with a group of 10, 15 or so toddler-sized children. Suddenly one of the grandparents spots the dogs in the distance and cries out in obvious alarm. Pandemonium then ensues. The not-so-fit and agile grandparents are frantic. They're making clumsy efforts to form a human chain, holding hands in a line facing the dogs to protect the toddlers, who they've moved to the top of the play equipment. Protect them from what? Where is this super danger coming from that alarms them so? Rabies, contaminated stray dogs, infest this dirt poor, corrupt basket case nation where these folks come from. And no one has told them that rabies does not exist in Australia, and stray dogs are very rare indeed in this country. Dogs, of course, are rarely kept as pets in these peasant nations, and dogs being walked by humans are hardly stray dogs. An attempt to communicate with the so-called migrant community leaders goes nowhere and is viewed with smug, condescending smiles. You silly white people worrying about your dogs and pets, don't you know that it is us that will be in the majority soon here in your country, and your silly white folks' customs will be no more? Why don't you forget about it all now, and it'll be less painful for you white folks later on? In a similar situation, walking a dog, a group of brown migrants, one of whom did have some English and more middle class looking in this case, they were grouped around some seats in an outdoor area in a Sydney park. And a white man came by walking his dog. One of the migrant women who first saw the dog jumped up and wailed loudly, as if in mortal danger, as if she's being pursued by a knife-wielding or a gunman or something that was going to take her life immediately. She's wailing at the top of her voice. And then the other women jumped up, looked at the dog and also wailed, and they made these theatrical attempts that they were running away from this terrible danger, but they were rather unfit, if not corpulent, so a tortoise could have overtaken them, which allowed the scene to become some tragic, dark comedy of these people running around and were trying to run around. The white dog walker was quite bewildered and asked what the problem was, only to be greeted with more wailing, wild-eyed looks and clumsy running away. At an Australian zoo during penguin feeding time, two groups of school children on excursion appeared at this popular event. One is a local white-only group of children, the other is a brown-only group of school children, and they must be on a school excursion or something like that. But the brown group, they don't look like they're offspring of peasants. It suggests that they're from a well-connected families in some third world crony economy. They're not speaking English, and the groups are probably 10, 11 years old, something like that. As the penguins gather around the keeper for the food, one younger penguin, standing equidistant between two paths leading to the keeper, cannot decide which of the two equal paths to take and stands agitated and squawks in distress. The penguin is directly behind the keeper, and the keeper hasn't seen it at this point, and the white children, with very clear concern for the penguin, call out loudly to the keeper, pointing out the penguin, saying, look at the penguin there, don't forget to feed that penguin there on its own. And they're earnestly, almost begging the keeper to be aware of and to feed the isolated penguin. Only when the keeper has fed the penguin did the white children sort of calm down and stop calling out. Justice was done, fairness was achieved, and that was important to them, you could tell. By contrast, the brown children not only made no attempt to alert the keeper, they quickly agreed as a group the penguin had no right to be alive and were amused by its distress. A cleaner, a rural peasant migrant from a third world basket case economy, says he has no idea why we in the West have dogs as pets. In his country, they feed live dogs to alligators and watch the terrified animal struggle until dead. They also feed live dogs to pythons and take bets on how long it will take the pythons to crush the dog to death. Sometimes the whole village gathers to watch the sport. He added sometimes the dog gets away, so what they do just to make sure the dog doesn't get away is they break its leg first, so it can't escape, so it's better sport that way. He was utterly casual and matter of fact when talking, so we're not referring to one-off examples of vindictive feraldom, but rather what is to them a natural way of life. Before we even touch on the subject of forced mass migration, which is a controversial topic in its own right, the West needs to deal with the issue of migrant assimilation integration, which, for the most part, is and continues to be a catastrophic failure of major proportions, intentional or not. Should Western civics and customs habits be taught to would-be migrants, and should it be rigorously tested before any one of them can even set foot in the country as a migrant or apply for migrant status? You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.